All right, how is everybody doing today? All right, welcome to Bible class here, and we are going to be continuing talking about the book of Matthew and specifically looking at one more thing, one more main emphasis of Jesus. And so, if you recall, last couple times, we were talking about how Jesus emphasized the heart and he emphasized what's important to people is not just their outward appearance, but also the heart, right? And he had a lot of conflict with the Pharisees because of that. Remember, the Pharisees, they were looking at the outward appearance and they cared about the outward appearance, especially because they were they were resistant to all the foreign powers that were coming in there, right? Resistant to the Greeks, resistant to the Romans, and they wanted to emphasize their Jewishness, their difference. And so they emphasized the outward stuff, whereas Jesus emphasized the heart or the inward aspect of morality. And today we're going to look at a different aspect of Jesus, his what he emphasized, and we're going to look at love. And we're going to talk about how Jesus emphasized love. Okay? So today, before we get started on that, let me just see if you guys have any questions that you guys have for me. Oh, you're traveling back to China today. Man, a lot of you guys traveling, which, yeah, things do look better in China than America, but keep in mind that the airplanes are a super, super dangerous place, right? You're going to be cramped together with a whole bunch of people in an airplane. If one person's sick, they can spread it to everybody. So I would recommend people staying here. But anyway, if you're going back, yes, you can turn your homework in later just tell me ahead of time when you're traveling so I'll know that for those couple days, then I will be able to take care of it. You're in an airplane right now? Holy cow, how are you able to chat if you're in an airplane? I'm assuming that you're on the ground. But anyway, yeah, I don't know, or whatever. So be careful on an airplane. Super, super crazy. Hopefully everything goes well and you're safe and healthy and all that kind of stuff. Good. Have a nice trip. But anyway, yeah. So great. You can join us on the airplane. And yes, you can turn your homework in late. No problem. I understand with all that kind of stuff. JetBlue, in-flight Wi-Fi. Man, wow. I guess I'm behind the times. I haven't taken an airplane in man, when's the last time I took an airplane? It was like 7 years ago or something like that. Yeah. Yes. I don't know how to say your name. Gorhari. I remember you from the last is physics class. You were on my live stream. So anyway, yes. So good luck and have a nice trip and all that, and no problem. Don't worry about your homework until you get there and can take care of it. And enjoy your flight with your Wi-Fi and be careful. Ideally, wear a mask, but that's tough to do when you're in an airplane. All right. So with that said, we're going to be looking in Matthew. And great for you guys that have all showed up. So let's look at first, we're going to go all the way back to Matthew chapter 5 and go on from there. So one more aspect. And so we're going to be, and I want you guys to keep this in mind that we're thinking about, okay, what was important to Jesus? We want to get kind of the main ideas of Jesus, right? So main ideas of Jesus' teaching. And we said the first one that we talked about was really the heart, right? The heart matters. And by that, we meant all of the inward motivations, all of the desires and purpose of a person, and not simply just their action. And two, today we're going to be talking about love, which we've mentioned before, but we're going to focus on it today. All right, so with that said, I'm just going to open us up in prayer. And let's go ahead and pray. Dear Lord, we just thank you for this day. We thank you for the ability to be here safely and to be learning at home while other people might be at work or might be out of work. And we just pray, especially for those who are going to work or those who are in airplanes like Chi, that you just keep them safe and healthy. And we just pray for a speedy end to this terrible coronavirus that's spreading all over. We just pray that you would stop it and that you would keep us healthy. Pray in Jesus' name, amen. All right, so we're just going to look at starting with Matthew chapter 5, and we're going to pick and choose. So I know we're going back and forth, so we're not just reading straight, but I want to do this so we can really look at kind of the main ideas. Because in Matthew chapter 5, Jesus talks about a bunch of different ideas, and we want to just look at one at a time, or one main one at a time. So today I want to look at back to the Beatitudes. Remember, we've already discussed the beginning part where he talks about blessed are the poor in spirit. And today we want to look at where he says, down here, he says, blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. And then down in verse 9, blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called sons of God. And so we get a look at what Jesus cares about here, right? Blessed are the merciful. That's not a normal thing that people always do. Sometimes people are merciful, but a lot of times people are not. And what is this whole idea of merciful and this whole idea of being peacemakers? So we're going to look at that. So love has a lot of different aspects to it, and that's the main thing for today, okay? And so Jesus said, blessed are the merciful. And he said, blessed are the peacemakers. Okay? And when we're thinking about mercy, we're thinking oftentimes about someone who has done you wrong, someone who is your enemy, someone that maybe deserves something or you think should be harmed. Okay? And this, blessed are the merciful. It's for those who are not going to get revenge, right? So, no revenge. And there's some aspect of forgiveness there. And we're going to come back to this concept of forgiveness later, but right now, because a lot of these things are all tied together, we're going to find that even as we talk about love, the heart is going to come back into it too, because these things are all kind of intertwined with each other. It's really impossible for me to talk about just one concept. So we're going to come and focus on forgiveness again later. But it ties into this concept of love, right? And so Jesus said, blessed are the merciful, blessed are those, who don't take revenge, who can forgive others. And so mercy, that's looking at, so you have, let's say, an enemy, and you don't hurt them, whether it's physically or emotionally or financially. You don't hurt them. You have compassion on them. All right? And so mercy can also be an aspect of having compassion on those who, might just be unfortunate about something. Okay? So it's not necessarily your enemy, but someone that is unfortunate, and you can have mercy on them. You can have mercy and maybe help them out. Okay? So sometimes you might even help out those in need, or even help out even sometimes your enemy. And we don't always call people our enemies, do we, right? But there are people that you're angry with. There are people that have hurt you. There are people that have done things to make you sad or make you angry. And that's what I mean. Those would be considered your enemies in some respect, okay? So those people that have hurt you, Jesus is saying, be merciful. Be merciful. Now, being merciful doesn't mean being stupid, okay? But it does mean that you need to not seek revenge, to forgive others, you don't want to hurt others. It's rather that you want the best situation. Now, it doesn't mean be a victim and let somebody hurt you. That's not at all what Jesus is talking about. But it says, be merciful, for those who are merciful will be shown mercy. And so when you're merciful, that God will be merciful to you. And that includes when you are God's enemy. It includes when you don't have faith in him. It includes when you turn your back on him. It includes when you sin and do bad things. God will have mercy on you, right? And that's what you want. So when you're merciful to others, when you forgive others and are kind to others and don't seek revenge and don't seek to hurt them, God will treat you in the same way that you treat others. And so that's a powerful thing. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Blessed are the peacemakers. This is very, very similar. And it says, blessed are the peacemakers. Why? For they will be called the sons of God. That means, if you're going to be called the sons of God, that means you are like God. Now, not that you are an all-powerful being or anything like that. Obviously, you're not. You're a person. But when you're a peacemaker, that means you are acting like God, or feeling or thinking like God, and that's good. Peacemakers are who? The peacemakers are the ones that are, they don't want to have enemies. They're trying to have good relationships with as many people as possible, as all the time, and not just between you and others. So you and others, but a peacemaker doesn't just care about you, but it also cares about others and others. So a peacemaker is one that not only is friends with others and tries to be at peace with others and have friendly relationships with others, but is someone that encourages others to be friendly with others. And that's an important distinction here with peacemakers. Peacemakers are those who encourage peace and good relationships with all people. And that is something that, as we look around the world, we don't always have. Hopefully with this terrible situation that we have with this pandemic, people will come back to being peacemakers and not love war and not have enemies and hold on to their anger. It's a lot easier to be a peacemaker when you're not selfish and when you don't love to be first and to push others down. A peacemaker is someone that cares about others. And so these are two good aspects, or two main distinctions of love. And so we're gonna tie that in, and Jesus is going to connect these all. So these are all interconnected, okay? But these are aspects of love. When you love others, you're merciful to them. When you love others, you want to be at peace with them, and you want others to be at peace with others. So these are all aspects of love, and we're going to look at more aspects of love today. All right. Now, let's continue on in the Bible, and we are looking still in chapter 5. We're going to look in chapter 5, verse 38. So if you guys can read it here, or you can follow along on your Bible in your device or whatever. All right. So you have verse 38, and let's just read in here. You have heard that it was said, eye for an eye and tooth for tooth. Now, a little bit of context for that concept of an eye for an eye and a tooth for tooth was actually a merciful concept. Well, what do I mean by that? An eye for an eye and tooth for a tooth was put in place as a law, not a moral law, but an actual, like a country's law, the law of Israel, as a purpose of justice. So what do I mean? So when someone committed a crime, let's say you got in a fight with someone and they gouged out your eye and they took your eye, right? The penalty for that would be you would get your eye gouged out in response, which seems cruel and unusual punishment, but it's actually fair. What do I mean by that? A lot of the countries at that time, you might be, let's say, put to death for that. So you start a fight and you take out someone's eyes, and then you're put to death for that. Well, that's not fair. And so this concept of an eye for an eye was actually a merciful thing, was saying, no, you can't do more than that. You can't, if someone took off took out your eye, you can't do more than that. You can't take out their eye and hurt them more. Okay? And that's what revenge also often is. Revenge happens when someone hurts you and you want to hurt them more. So the concept of an eye for an eye initially was really a merciful concept of saying you cannot do more than they did to you. And it was never about revenge, it was about law, so that if somebody hurt somebody else, that the law said that they could be harmed in the same way, okay? Now, obviously, as if you were harmed, you could say, well, I'm not going to, prosecute them or something like that. But this law stipulated essentially you can't do more than that. So Jesus is actually quoting from the Bible here. He's saying, you've heard it said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But I tell you what? So the distinction here is we're going to go from the law of a country to a personal practice. When Jesus is saying this, he's not saying we shouldn't have laws against criminals. No, he's saying rather, this is a way of life that I want you to live by, rather than anything about justice. Okay? So he says, but I tell you, do not resist an evil person. If anyone or someone strikes you on the right cheek, turn to him the other also. And if someone wants to sue you and take your tunic, let him have your cloak as well. If someone forces you to go, well, actually, let's stop here and talk about the first part. So Jesus is saying, this is like the extreme of don't take revenge. And sometimes Jesus will speak in hyperboles, which we've listened to before, right? We've just heard Jesus talk about don't let your right hand know what your left hand is doing. We've heard Jesus say, if your eye causes you to sin, gouge it out. If your hand causes you to sin, cut it off. Those are hyperboles where Jesus is trying to make a point by having this extreme example where he doesn't literally want you to do that, okay? So Jesus is not saying, okay, you're in a situation where somebody's going to harm you and then you turn your other cheek, because that would be a silly thing to do, okay? What he's saying is, we get right here where he says at the very beginning, do not resist an evil person. So not only don't take revenge, but don't necessarily even seek justice, okay? That you should try to seek peace and mercy more than you try to seek justice, even for a case where somebody has hurt you. Jesus puts a priority on peace and mercy over justice. Not that justice is a bad thing, justice is a good thing, but he's saying we can do better than that. Rather than take revenge, rather than not only not take revenge and be, fair, we want to give mercy and we want to try to be at peace with others. So when it says, turn to him the other also, he's not saying literally, let him go hit you again. Oh, hey, that didn't hurt, please hit me again. That's not what he's saying. He's saying, let's try to not take offense and rather be at peace. Seek peace with other people. Down here, if someone forces you to go 1 mile, what in the world is that talking about? That is specifically talking about the Romans, okay? So there is even a law, right? Remember, this is the time when Rome controlled Israel. Okay, so the Roman citizens and the Roman military had more rights than other people. And so a soldier could force anyone, I suppose besides the Roman citizen, but they could force someone to help them out and to carry their stuff for 1 mile. Okay, so maybe a soldier needed help and they were trying to get some help, and so you could they could force you to say, okay, you got to help me out for 1 mile. But after that, the law said, all right, you can't make somebody do more than that. Okay, so a Roman soldier in help could ask and force you to help them for 1 mile. But after that, they had to get help from somebody else. All right, but what did Jesus say? He said, if someone forces you to go 1 mile, go with him 2. So he's saying that we want to do extra help for other people, okay? So maybe, and remember, Rome, they're not friends of Israel, right? A lot of people at that time considered Rome the enemy, okay? And so when Jesus talks about loving your enemies, he's specifically addressing this issue with Rome. So he's saying, okay, the Rome, they're going to make you do this, okay? Help them out more. So this is all about helping others. Help them more. That is what love does. Okay? Love does that. Okay? Love helps others out even more. It doesn't just consider what you care about. It considers what others care about, even if they're the enemy, even if they're Rome, even if they're a Roman soldier, which you wish they weren't even in your country. What are they doing in your country? We're not Rome. Roman soldiers should go back to Rome. But as a person, we need to care about those, even our enemies, and help them out even more than they ask. So that's what this is really all about, okay? It's not about letting people hurt you. It's about helping those who are your enemies. It's about loving those who are your enemies and loving everyone, okay? So let's continue on, all right? Give to the one who asks and do not turn away from the one who wants to borrow. So we are going to try to help others out. Always, not to be harmed yourself, but to try to help others. You've heard it said, love your neighbor and hate your enemy, right? Now that's not from the Bible. Nowhere in the Bible does it say hate your enemy, right? So that, I believe, was probably a saying at the time. It might, I do not know, but it might even be in the oral tradition of the Pharisees. It might not be, but I'm sure it was a saying at the time. The Bible says love your neighbor, but the Bible never, ever, ever says hate your enemy. Okay, so Jesus is saying, you've heard it said love your neighbor and hate your enemy, but I tell you this, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. Yes, they're your enemies. Yes, they're foreign soldiers, but you should love them. You should try to help them out. You should try to be at peace with them. Pray for those who persecute you. Persecuting someone who's actively hurting you, whether physically or emotionally or mentally or financially. Pray for those who persecute you, that you may be sons of your Father in heaven. That goes right back to what we read before. Remember, peacemakers. This is exactly what Jesus is talking about. Blessed are the peacemakers. Why? For they will be called sons of God. So we have a clear connection to this right over here. Love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, that you may be sons of your Father in heaven. Because when you love those who don't love you, you are being and acting like God. And that Jesus likes a lot. That is exactly what Jesus is really all about, right? And this is an example. He causes the sun to rise on the evil and the good. So God gives good things to everybody. And he sends rain on the righteous and on the unrighteous. The sun and the rain are both good things. People misinterpret this sometimes, and it's a really silly thing. Sometimes people think, oh, the sun is good and the rain's bad, simply because they think in terms of our modern day ideas of leisure and of going out in the sun is a fun thing and having a rainy day is a bad thing. No, we got to think about this in terms of back in Jesus' time, people were farmers and they cared about the farming situation. So when it says that God causes the sun to rise and he sends rain, both of them are good. Why? Because sun and rain make crops grow. They help plants to grow. They help you to get food. And so in that day, and for all throughout the Bible, both sun and rain are good things. Okay? So God causes both the sun to rise on the evil and the good, and sends rain to the righteous and the unrighteous. So God gives good things to both good people and to bad people too. Okay? And so Jesus is saying, we should be like that. We should be like God, who's giving good things to both the righteous and the unrighteous. For if you love those who love you, what reward will you get? Are not even the tax collectors doing that? And if you greet only your brothers, What are you doing more than others? Do not even the pagans do that? Be perfect, therefore, as your heavenly Father is perfect. So, we're going to pause here and think about that passage. Loving your enemies is not easy, right? Loving your enemies is not easy. And I want you guys in Google Classroom to comment on that. Okay? So we're going to love everyone. We're going to love even our enemies, which is a pretty big extent of love. So in your Google Classroom, I've given you guys an assignment that I want you guys to do. And this assignment is I want you guys to think about a situation that it would be really difficult to love someone else in or love many people in. So it doesn't have to be one person, it could be many people. But I want you to think up of a situation in which it would be difficult to love, okay? And you have to use at least 100 words, so one paragraph, at least 100 words to do that. And you'll see the assignment is already written there in Google Classroom for you. Or let's suppose you don't want to think of that, or you could respond to somebody else's comment and use, once again, 100 words to do it in, and talk about how you would respond in that way, how it would be good to respond in that way, okay? So you have a difficult situation. How can you love in that situation? How can you act good in that situation? So your post must be 100 words or more, and I want everybody to think about this whole idea of loving your enemies. And when is that difficult? How is that difficult? Make up a situation and talk about how we can love others. How can we love when it is difficult? And I want this to not just be a theoretical thing. I want this to be a practical question. Seriously. Whether you're a Christian or not, whether you believe in God or not, we can still look at this concept of loving our enemies as a beautiful, beautiful teaching of Jesus. And I want you guys to think about how can we apply that and how can we love when it is difficult? When is it difficult and how can we love in that situation? Okay, so back to the Bible. Let's continue on here I've got a whopping 4 people watching live. But you guys are fine to come back later. I know there's probably very few people on right now because we have that strange class time on Wednesdays. And so normally we meet 1:50, and some of you guys are probably not here right for the live stream because of that. And that's fine. All right. So make sure you come back and listen to this later, and that's fine. So back to the Bible. Let's see what else Jesus said about love. And we're going to have some really, really good verses, and some of these are concepts that that people are using nowadays, and we might not even associate it with Jesus himself. And one of these verses, this is going to be a memory verse for you guys. This is Matthew 7, verse 12 here, and that is right here. Matthew 7, verse 12, a little bit out of context of what's going on, but kind of more of a just a summary verse of everything that Jesus is teaching. Okay, so he says, so in everything, do to others what you would have them do to you. For this sums up the law and the prophets. And you know this is huge when Jesus says that at the end. For this sums up the law and the prophets. This one sentence, Jesus is saying, hey, this covers it all. This is the main idea. And so this is big. So in everything you do, do to others what you would have them do to you. That's pretty simple. And that is, at the heart of it, love. Now, it's certainly possible to treat others nicely even if you don't love them. But it's even better to make that an act of love, okay? So we have this idea of love as treat others the way you want to be treated. Okay? So you might ask, well, how do I love others? You know, what should I do? And what's a good thing to do? How should I love others? Well, everybody can think about how they want other people to treat them, right? We can all do that. Even like my 3-year-old daughter can think about, how do I want other people to treat me, right? And when you think about how do I want other people to treat me, then you can start, putting other people's shoes on, and you can say, okay, that's how I should treat other people. Okay? How do I want people to treat me? That's how I should treat other people. And that's going to be love. You're going to find, because everybody wants to be loved. Everybody wants other people to love them. Well, you need to treat other people that way, with mercy, with kindness, with somebody just trying to help you out when you need help. Okay? So whatever that is, treat others the way you want to be treated. Okay, more. Let's see what else Jesus talked about for love. So we have, let's go to Matthew chapter 12. Chapter 12. We have, and this is a passage we're going to spend a little bit more time just reading through this kind of situation here. Right, we have, let me see, where am I? Matthew chapter 12, verse 9. And this is getting back to the idea of the heart and the Pharisees and hypocrisy, but in more of a love type context. And I love this story here. So here we have Jesus. And Jesus is going around from place to place. Okay, so here's Jesus going on from that place. He went into their synagogue. And remember, synagogue is a vocab term. It's essentially like a Jewish church, but it's really just a gathering place. So it could be used as a church, or it could be used as a community place. It's just a community place of gathering, all right? Not a temple, all right? Not some kind of ornate place, just a gathering place. So Jesus went into their synagogue. Every town, more or less, at that time had a synagogue in Israel. And a man with a shriveled hand was there. Okay? So he's got a problem with his hand. He can't use his hand. Looking for a reason to accuse Jesus. Ooh, that's not nice. They asked him. So here we have, who is they? Looking over here. They are, I don't want to assume that it's Pharisees, but I'm thinking it's Pharisees. Let's come back over here. We have, trying to figure it out. Pharisees. Yeah. So Pharisees. So back from the context of verse 2 here, that's who the they is. Sorry about that. So looking for a reason to accuse Jesus, the Pharisees asked him, is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath? Is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath? Now we have to remember the context of what the Pharisees are thinking about. Remember, the Bible doesn't answer this question. The Bible doesn't say, oh, you can heal people or you can't heal people on the Sabbath. The Bible just says, rest on the Sabbath. That's all. It says, do no ordinary work on the Sabbath. Take a day of rest and take a day of worship. And that's it. The Bible doesn't get into details of what they should do. So where in the world are the Pharisees getting that? Remember, the Pharisees believed in this oral tradition. Okay? So the Pharisees didn't just have the Bible, they also had the oral tradition, which was the Mishnah, which was basically their teachers, and all that tradition they had. And a lot of this stuff is good stuff, but also it essentially is commentary on the law, and is commentary of all the details of what does it mean, right? So the Bible says, keep the Sabbath, and the Pharisees, okay, what does it mean to keep the Sabbath? Because they wanted to, honestly, they wanted to know, because they wanted everything, they wanted to do everything right. They wanted to do everything according to what outwardly is correct, okay? And so that's what the Pharisees are coming from. They're saying, is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath, right? And Jesus just tears apart. He doesn't just address their statement. He's literally tearing apart the Mishnah and saying that's not authoritative. Their teachers were wrong, okay? So that's tough to them. He said to me, if any of you has a sheep and it falls into a pit on the Sabbath, will you not take hold of it and lift it out? And so Jesus is thinking, well, yes, of course you will. You will save your sheep. If it falls in a pit, you're going to lift it out. Okay? How much more valuable is a man than a sheep? Therefore, it is lawful to do good on the Sabbath. So Jesus is saying, well, actually, so much for your oral traditions. Sometimes they're wrong. Your oral traditions were trying to get to all the little details of the outward, doings of these laws, right? These outward details. But Jesus is saying, well, let's just stick with the Bible, and the Bible deals with the heart of the matter. And what is the heart of the matter here, right? The heart of the matter is that love is more important, right? He's saying we have this person who needs help, okay? And so love, the heart of the matter, is more important than not working, okay? And whether we consider, healing somebody on the Sabbath work or not, that's a whole nother matter. But Jesus is saying it is always okay. It's always okay to do good. It's always okay to love. No matter what other thing is going on, it's always good to love. No matter what. Even if there's some kind of law against it, some kind of tradition against it. And that's big. We can point the finger and blame the Pharisees all we want to, but there are lots of different social laws and social things that we have in our current life, right? There's all kinds of modern day traditions of whatever it is that we might have, and it might not be cool. It might not be a good thing to love someone according to whatever tradition or whatever place you are. But Jesus is saying, no, forget your oral traditions, forget your culture, okay? Seriously, we have to apply this to our own culture. And you can think about when that is, okay? But not that your culture is a bad thing. There's all kinds of good things in traditions and in cultures. But when it comes down to somebody in need, forget your culture. Forget what the right thing is to do in your culture. Love is always more important. Okay? Love is always more important than what your culture says is the right thing to do. I don't care what your culture is. I don't care what your traditions are. Love is more important. And that's exactly what Jesus is doing here. So he says, let's continue reading. Then what did Jesus do? He didn't just say that. He said to the man, stretch out your hand. So he stretched it out and it was completely restored. Now, Jesus has power, okay? We don't have the power like Jesus did, or maybe some people with great faith do. But Jesus had power to heal, and just as sound as the other. But the Pharisees went out and plotted how they might kill Jesus. So let's look at that. That is a real contrast of love and hate. Jesus loved this person, so he broke tradition. He broke their cultural norms. He disobeyed the cultural tradition, and he said, I'm going to love this person anyway. And he healed the person, and in response, the Pharisees wanted to kill Jesus. They hated him. Why? A couple things. They hated Jesus because he was breaking their oral traditions. They hated Jesus also because he was popular, right? They wanted to be popular, and they were jealous of Jesus. The Pharisees were used to being the popular ones, right? Remember, we talked about those four groups. The Pharisees were the most popular of all the groups. But now Jesus was coming in there, teaching something different, teaching something without any kind of oral traditions that they had. And he was more popular than them, right? And they were jealous. So one, they were jealous, and two, he was breaking their oral traditions. All right, let's move on. Let's move on. A little bit more here before we're done. Matthew 22, verse 34. 22, verse 34. All right. So this here is just kind of a summary of everything. Remember, we talked about the golden rule where Jesus says, do to others as you would have them do to you. This is also another summary verse. All right. And it's just very, very big, obviously, because, he says this. Okay. So hearing that Jesus had silenced the Sadducees, the Pharisees got together. All right. One of them, an expert in the law, tested him with this question: Teacher, which is the greatest commandment in the law? So this might even be just a valid question. What's the most important, right? And Jesus replied, love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. That is a quote from the Old Testament. It's part of the Old Testament, so it's nothing new, all right? Jesus is just saying that's the most important. Love God. This is the first and greatest commandment, and the second is like it. So now Jesus is putting a twist on it. He's saying, there's actually two, okay? And Jesus often does this. He'll often put a twist on something. So the Pharisees probably maybe even agreed with that. Yes, the first commandment, and they would even quote that, right? And this comes from one of the most quoted parts in the Old Testament, right? Where the Lord your God, the Lord is one. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. All right, that is still today considered one of the most important parts of the Old Testament. But then Jesus puts a spin on it, and the second is like it. He's saying, there's also something that's also very, very important. Love your neighbor as yourself. All the law and the prophets hang on these two commandments: love God and love others. Don't forget those two, but those two have all of the law right there in them. If you can love God and you can love others, you have fulfilled the law. Period. That's what Jesus says. So that's huge. I'm going to have you guys memorize that too. That is another memory verse. So today we're coming up with so many important verses that you guys are going to have. But I don't want to end on that. I want to end on something out of Matthew, because I think it's going to be relevant to today, to just look at one more perspective of what love looks like. And that is another very famous Bible passage, 1 Corinthians chapter 13. Okay? So this is not Jesus talking, but it's so relevant that I wanted to go ahead and end on this today. Galatians, all right. Right. Oop. 1 Corinthians chapter 13. Here we are. This is known as the love chapter in the Bible, so highly relevant to what we're talking about today. And let's just read through it. I'm not even going to comment on it. I just want to read through it so we can meditate on, what does it really look like to love? Okay? And so this is Paul writing, and he's writing about love. If I speak in the tongues of men and of angels, but have not love, I am only a resounding gong or clanging cymbal. If I have the gift of prophecy and can fathom all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have faith that can move mountains, but have not love, I am nothing. If I give all my possessions to the poor and surrender my body to the flames, but have not love, I gain nothing. I guess I do need to comment on it. This reminds us of what Jesus was talking about, where he says, when you give to the needy, don't let your right hand know what your left hand is doing. The hypocrites, they make sure everybody knows about it. So yes, it is possible to give all your possessions to the poor and still not love them. What's important is not just your actions, but also your heart. So this is what love does, but love is also a thing of the heart. Love is patient, love is kind. It does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud, it is not rude, it is not self-seeking. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. Love never fails. Okay? I'm going to go ahead and stop there. You can read the rest if you want to. I am all done for today. We're done talking about love. If you guys have any questions, you can write it in the chat, email me, or write it down in Google Classroom. But I'm going to go ahead and end there. Love. Love is a beautiful thing. Love is always more important than your culture. Now, I don't mean forget about your culture, but forget about your culture only if it's conflicting with love. And so love trumps everything. Love is more important than your culture. Love is more important than your law. Love is not self-seeking. Love is patient, kind. It's merciful. Love is a peacemaker. Love is what we should be. All right. I'm going to end there. See you guys. Have a great rest of your week. Peace.